Imagine the sheer, unadulterated horror of being stuck on the side of a desolate road, your knuckles white as you grip a steering wheel that has suddenly become a useless piece of plastic because someone you invited into your home, someone you trusted with your secrets, literally cut your brake lines. You are hyperventilating, the metallic scent of fear filling the cabin. And in your desperation, you decide to FaceTime your teenage daughter just to see a friendly face before the world ends, only to find the ultimate betrayal on the screen. There, in your designated seat at the graduation ceremony, sits your sweet, helpful next-door neighbor. She is stroking your daughter's hair with a proprietary air, looking up at your husband with the hunger of a predator that has finally cornered its prey. This isn't just a midlife crisis or a simple crush. This is the culmination of a 15-year hostile takeover. Welcome to the twisted world of Violet, a woman who doesn't just want a new life. She wants to wear yours like a designer coat. Did you notice how the most dangerous people always start their invasion with a warm smile and a plate of home-baked goods? We aren't just looking at a stalker. We are looking at a psychological architect who has been building a monument to her own madness for over a decade. For 15 long years, while the rest of the world was busy growing up, starting careers, and living in reality, Violet was trapped in a digital and mental shrine dedicated to her high school sweetheart, Garrett. While most people spend their late-night hours scrolling through mindless social media feeds or catching up on sleep, Violet was engaging in a ritual that borders on the ritualistic. She spent 8 hours a night, every single night, holding a photograph of Garrett, kissing the glossy paper until the edges frayed, whispering to his image as if she could manifest his physical presence through sheer, terrifying willpower. This isn't missing someone. This is a full-blown spiritual haunting. When she finally drops $5 million, yes, $5 million because apparently obsession pays well, to buy the house directly next door to Garrett, you realize this isn't a romantic comedy setup. This is a tactical deployment. She didn't buy a home, she bought a sniper's nest with a panoramic view of his kitchen table. She spent those millions not for the real estate value, but for the proximity to the man she believes is hers by divine right. When Violet first rolls into the neighborhood, she plays the role of the long-lost, slightly eccentric friend with terrifyingly practiced precision. Garrett, who seems to have the situational awareness of a particularly friendly golden retriever, welcomes her with open arms. He sees a piece of his innocent past, totally oblivious to the fact that his high school ex is vibrating with the suppressed urge to delete his wife from the equation. Even his wife, Anne, is a victim of her own inherent kindness. She sees a lonely woman moving in next door and thinks she's found a new confidant, not realizing she has actually invited a psychological termite into the very foundation of her marriage. Did you notice how Violet's eyes dart around the house during that first visit, as if she's already mentally redecorating the place with her own furniture? At their first dinner together, Violet shows up in a dress so bold it practically screams for a restraining order. She is leaning in too far, laughing just a bit too loud, and doing everything short of skywriting her intentions in the middle of the living room. But Garrett is annoying oblivious. He is focused on Anne, touching her hand, being the attentive husband, and every time he shows affection to his actual wife, you can practically see the smoke curling out of Violet's ears. It is in this moment that Violet's strategy shifts. She realizes she can't just win him over by being the pretty ex. She has to systematically dismantle Anne's entire existence until there is nothing left but a vacuum that only Violet can fill. The sabotage begins with a surgical strike on Anne's professional life. Anne is a high achiever, a woman who takes immense pride in her career and her reputation for being reliable. Violet, sensing this, strikes where the armor is thinnest. When she accidentally learns that Anne is preparing high-stakes gift baskets for her most important clients, Violet offers her assistance with the faux sincerity of a serpent. She offers to bake pastries, a gesture that seems so quintessentially neighborly that Anne would feel like a jerk for saying no. But Violet isn't using sugar and spice. She is using an allergen like a weapon of mass destruction. She knows, likely through her obsessive research, that one of those clients has a severe allergy. She waits for the fallout with the patience of a spider. When the client ends up in the emergency room and Anne is fired on the spot for her negligence, the psychological warfare officially enters phase 2. But watch the brilliance of the gaslighting that follows. When Anne, Understandably suspicious and heartbroken, confronts her, Violet doesn't flinch. She plays the innocent, dim-witted neighbor so convincingly that Anne actually ends up apologizing to her. Think about the level of manipulation required to ruin a woman's career, nearly kill a stranger, and then make the victim feel like the aggressor. Have you ever seen someone so expertly flip the script that you start to question your own eyes? But a lost job is just the appetizer. Violet wants to starve the marriage of its oxygen, which means going after the finances. She enlists a follower, one of those weak-willed pawns she likely manipulated on the dark corners of the internet, to pose as a high-end financial advisor. She knows the family is feeling the squeeze of a looming college tuition for their daughter, and she uses that financial anxiety as a hook. While Anne is still reeling from the loss of her income and feeling like a failure, this fake advisor calls with a guaranteed investment opportunity. It is the classic bait and switch. Anne is desperate to fix the hole in their budget, to be the provider again, and Violet is right there to nudge her toward the edge. The sheer audacity of Violet choosing a cafe where she knows Garrett will see them is chef's kiss levels of villainy. She wants him to see his wife huddled in a corner with a strange man, looking secretive and guilt-ridden. Garrett doesn't see a stressed wife trying to save their future. He sees a woman who is hiding things, using their joint account for shady deals and failing to mention she was fired. The tension in their household starts to thicken like wet cement, and Violet is standing on the sidelines with a fan, blowing the fumes of resentment right into their faces. As the marriage begins to fracture under the weight of these lies, Violet moves in on the daughter. This is perhaps the most calculated and cold-blooded move in her entire playbook. She knows that if she can win over the child, she secures her place in the family unit permanently. When the daughter is feeling neglected or caught in the crossfire of her parents' constant screaming matches, Violet steps in as the cool, gentle auntie. She does the girl's makeup, she listens to her teenage angst, and she subtly plants the seeds of doubt about Anne's stability. When the girl looks in the mirror and says she wishes her mom could be this gentle, Violet's mission is halfway to completion. She is creating a narrative where Anne is the hysterical, failing mother, and Violet is the serene, perfect replacement waiting in the wings. And when Anne finally catches them and tells Violet to stop meddling, Garrett doesn't see a protective mother setting boundaries. He sees a bitter, angry woman lashing out at a helpful neighbor who has been nothing but supportive. It is a masterclass in domestic infiltration. Violet isn't just breaking them up. She is rewriting their family history in real time, making herself the hero of a story she's burning to the ground. Do you ever wonder how much a person can take before they completely snap? Because Anne is at her absolute breaking point, and Violet is about to shove her off the cliff. Violet sneaks into their house because of course she has a key or knows exactly where they hide the spare, and steals their sensitive bank information. She doesn't just want them to argue about money, she wants them to be destitute. She transfers every single cent they have to her fake advisor's offshore account, effectively erasing their daughter's future and their own security in a single cold click. And then comes the piece de resistance, the car. Cutting the brakes is such a classic dramatic move, but in Violet's hands, it feels like a definitive death sentence. She wants Anne out of the way, not just emotionally but physically. She wants her stranded, broken, and humiliated, while Violet takes her place on the most important day of their daughter's life. The scene at the graduation is pure psychological horror. Imagine being Garrett, looking over and seeing this woman who has been so supportive during your difficult time with your unstable wife. She is sitting there cheering for your daughter, smelling like your wife's favorite perfume, and looking like the picture of stability. Meanwhile, Anne is calling from a ditch, screaming about breaks and stolen money, sounding exactly like the crazy person Violet has spent weeks convincing everyone she is. The final blow comes when the bank alert pings on Garrett's phone. A zero balance. The college fund is gone. The mortgage money is gone. Everything they worked for over 15 years has vanished. In Garrett's mind, Anne is the one who met with the advisor. Anne is the one who had the secret meetings. Anne is the one who invested their life savings into a black hole. He doesn't believe her denials because Violet has spent the last month building a mountain of evidence to the contrary. Every tear Anne sheds just looks like guilt to him. Every scream of innocence just sounds like a desperate lie from a woman who has failed her family. Did you notice how Violet just stands in the corner, barely containing a smile of triumph? She has successfully stripped Anne of her career, her money, her daughter's respect, and her husband's truck. She hasn't just moved next door. She has moved inside. But here is the thing about people like Violet. They think they've won the moment the house falls down, forgetting that they're still standing in the ruins. She thinks she can just step into the vacuum she created and live happily ever after. But an obsession like hers doesn't have an off switch. She didn't fall in love with Garrett. She fell in love with the idea of owning him. And now that she's destroyed everything he cares about, what exactly is left for her to love? The story leaves us in this chilling place where the truth is buried under a landslide of lies, and the perfect neighbor is the only one left standing with a shovel. It is a terrifying reminder that sometimes the person waving at you over the fence isn't just being friendly, they're measuring you for a coffin. Now that we've seen how Violet systematically replaced Anne,